good morning everyone in Europe and good evening to our colleagues in New Zealand where it's about 8:30 p.m. I am Michele Chiappini and I work in the Enterprise Europe Network team in ESMEA, the European Innovation Council and SME Executive Agency of the European Commission. Welcome to a new episode of the webinar series Embracing Global Markets. In today's episodes, we will learn more about the free trade agreement between EU and New Zealand, which came into effect on the 1st of May 2024. We are thrilled to have a panel of talented speakers today, each an expert in their own field, to help us navigate through the complexities of this free trade agreement, and most importantly, to understand and leverage the benefits and opportunities coming with this agreement. Before we dive in, allow me to spend a few words on the Enterprise Europe Network, which we also call the EEN. EEN is the world's largest support network for small and medium enterprises with international ambitions. Our network expands in more than 40 countries worldwide with over 450 network partners. EEN member organizations offer free, tailored support services for companies, startups, and scale-ups and help them develop more sustainable and innovative business models, business resilience plan for future challenges such as supply chain disruptions, innovative digital solutions. They support their clients to benefit from the opportunities of the EU single market, ensure companies find the right sources of finance, and help them access international markets in Europe and beyond. Last but not least, EN advisors introduce companies to the right business partners and provide them with customized advice on EU rules and intellectual property tools. If you would like to learn more about the Enterprise Europe Network, check our website and get in touch with the local network partner in your region. But now, let's start introducing our first guests. Mariana Molnar, Policy Coordinator for Trade Relations with New Zealand in the European Commission Directorate General for Trade, and Diane Lacoste, Head of the Trade Section at the EU Delegation to New Zealand, based in Wellington. So, good morning, Mariana, and good evening to Diane. Now, they're going to tell us more about the scope and application of the EU-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement. So, I leave the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michele. Good morning and good evening to everyone, depending on your locations. I prepared a few slides to help you illustrate what the free trade agreement is about. So now I am trying to convince technology to be with me today. Can you see my slides? Okay. So, as Michele already mentioned, I'm Mariana Molnar. I work in the Directorate General responsible for trade within the European Commission, and I am the geographical coordinator for New Zealand. And together with my colleague, Diane, who is working as head of trade section in New Zealand, in Wellington, in the EU delegation, we will introduce you today the benefits and the two main legs, actually, of the economic engagement between the European Union and New Zealand, which is the Free Trade Agreement and the Horizon Europe program. What is a free trade agreement? A free trade agreement, when thinking about trade, people first tend to think about the tangible benefits, the duty savings, the increased volumes that a trade agreement could bring. But in the EU's practice, the free trade agreements cover much more than that. They also cover not only trading goods, but trading services, trading investment, and they also cover topics. They include provisions, commitments on topics which are closely related to trade. One of today's most important topic in this area is sustainable development and its relation to trade. And the free trade agreement between the EU and New Zealand has a very strong chapter on this. But there are also other provisions, for example, provisions covering the state-owned enterprises, provisions covering government procurement, animal welfare, also covering, for example, women's engagement in trade, Or sometimes we also include elements which are very specific and important to our trading partners. In the case of New Zealand, for example, this was the case for indigenous people and New Zealand's Maori population, who are treaty partners in New Zealand. So this agreement also has a chapter on the close involvement and cooperation of the Maori in international trade and in trade with the European Union. So this agreement between the EU and New Zealand is very broad, and actually this was the most modern agreement so far that the EU has concluded. We concluded the agreement in 2022, and as Michela already mentioned, it entered into force 2 years later, this year, 2024, in May. One may ask that for a big animal, sorry to use this word, a big group of countries like the EU, why is it important to have such an agreement with New Zealand, who is very far away and who is a smaller country? Well, free trade agreements, as I mentioned, are not only about, strictly speaking, core trading goods or trading services. They are also very important in terms of representing the importance of rules that are governing international trade. And this agreement was a very strong commitment in this regard. Such agreements are committing the partners to it, but they are also giving a signal internationally the importance about the importance of the rules governing trade. And in today's very tense geo-economic and geopolitical context, thinking about the war, thinking about the supply chain issues, which are changing all the time, we thought that such an agreement with a like-minded partner like New Zealand would be very important for the European Union. And the third reason why this agreement is very important for the EU is the EU's interest in the Indo-Pacific region, which was made very clear in the EU's Indo-Pacific strategy, published in 2021. And the EU already keeps on demonstrating its interest in this region over several years, and actually over several free trade agreements already concluded with countries in the Indo-Pacific region. There are already agreements in place with Korea, with Japan, with Vietnam, and with Singapore, and the agreement with New Zealand came fifth in this row. And just to also illustrate that New Zealand also focused on the value aspect and not only on the volume aspect and the duties aspect of this agreement. I would like to use a quote from New Zealand's previous Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, who was the Prime Minister at the time of concluding the free trade agreement. And she said at the conclusion even that this free trade agreement is not only about volumes, but also about values. And I think in one sentence, this describes very well the essence of it. And by the way, a technical remark that we tend to use a lot of acronyms. As you see on my slides, there is FTA there, which stands for Free Trade Agreement. I'm sure more will come. I try to spell them out as much as possible, but feel free to ask questions if something is not clear. As well, it was already mentioned before, the agreement entered into force almost 6 months ago, on the 1st of May this year. And here I just recalled a few of its main benefits. Obviously, it is bringing a lot of benefits to the area of trading goods. It is bringing a lot of benefits to farmers, to the agricultural producers. I will get back to this later. It is also bringing a more liberal and more transparent environment for investment and also for services and digital trade. I will later show you where to find sectoral details of the free trade agreement, because I know that today's audience is very diverse in terms of the economic sectors and economic interests that we are covering here. But let me recall a bit the overall benefits of this agreement without entering now the sector-specific details. The EU is New Zealand's third biggest trading partner, and as such, very, very important for New Zealand. But this agreement is also expected to bring benefits to the European Union exporters. The bilateral trade is expected to grow by 30%. How do we know this? Before or at the start of each and every trade agreement negotiation, we carry out a sustainable impact assessment. This is a very detailed economic and sustainability assessment, including not only the analysis of bilateral trade in terms of volumes, but also sustainability aspects, the effects of long-haul transport, human rights issues, the effects on the civil society, the effects on various sectors of the economy. And this analysis has shown that a significant increase is expected in trade for both sides. On the EU side, to continue with the expected benefits, this agreement could bring up to duty savings up to 140 million euros per year. And the negotiated outcome was very beneficial to EU exports because New Zealand agreed to remove all its tariffs, basically to move all tariffs on goods to zero immediately at entry into force. So this duty elimination already happened from the 1st of May. On the previous slide, I was referring to benefits to the agricultural sector. Here, I will take the EU's perspective and introduce it from that view. The agricultural sector is very sensitive, both for the EU and for New Zealand. And just to give you a bit of insights from the negotiations, this was one of the areas that was closed in the last moment. Particularly issues related to beef, sheep meat, butter, milk powder. These are clearly both the EU and New Zealand, we are very strong producers with very strong export interests, but also very protective of our markets. And the agreement managed to achieve a balanced outcome in terms of protecting the EU market, yet allowing the high quality New Zealand products to enter in certain quantities and under certain conditions. So the EU market is not fully liberalized, but still provides big market opening for New Zealand products. And also what is very important for wines and spirits and also food products is that the agreement is protecting the so-called geographical indications, the GIs, which ensures that all the EU quality products in the sectors of food and wine and spirits can enter the New Zealand market protected, and there will be no sort of fake products sold there. What are further benefits of the free trade agreement? The agreement, because it spells out rules and provisions and commitments in many areas linked to trade, it is bringing transparency and it is making it sure that the trade between the two partners is in line with international standards. As I mentioned before, it also has important provisions and commitments on services. So this will help service providers from the EU to enter New Zealand. It regulates how the service providers in certain sectors can enter the market, how their credentials, their degrees can be recognized, and so on. The agreement also brings more clarity and promotion for investment. It helps EU companies to participate in government procurement procedures opened by New Zealand, and it also gives transparent rules for digital trade. And very importantly, the agreement has dedicated provisions for small and medium-sized enterprises. And it not only that it is included in the text of the agreement itself, but the agreement commits both parties to develop dedicated web pages where small companies can find all the relevant rules and all the trade facilitative steps when selling goods to New Zealand or to the EU. It also provides a searchable database for import requirements. And it also provides for the so-called SME contact points on both sides, which can again help SMEs in finding information, help them to raise their concerns related to this free trade agreement. Here I would like to hand over to Diane who will introduce you the Horizon Europe program.
Many thanks, Mariana, and kia ora, from Wellington. I'm Diane Lacoste, so I'm the head of trade here at the delegation of the European Union to New Zealand. I thought I would also take the opportunity to give a rough idea of the institutional ecosystem that we have here linked to Europe in New Zealand. So we'll hear soon from Jonathan from the Enterprise Europe Network contact point here in New Zealand. The delegation of the European Union also works very closely with the embassies of the 8 member states that are represented here in Wellington, as well as with the embassies of the other member states accredited to New Zealand, most of which are based in Australia. Member states also have chambers of commerce and trade promotion agencies in New Zealand and or in Australia that we work closely with, as well as the New Zealand Europe Business Council. So we work very closely together, and we're very happy to help. The broader context of the EU-New Zealand relations, these relations are clearly on the rise. So the FTA clearly is a translation of the positive dynamics. There has also been very tangible steps taken recently on research and innovation. Last year, New Zealand became the first country outside of the European neighborhood to be associated to the Horizon Research Program, Pillar 2 especially. So now, after 1 year of implementation, we can say that this is very much a success story. The success rate of applications is about 26%, which is pretty good compared to the average. And we see very successful collaborations developing in very various sectors. We have actually just today wrapped up a series of events around Horizon Europe here in New Zealand in various cities, and it was actually fascinating to hear about a number of successful projects on digital health, on agriculture, on pest surveillance, on disaster preparedness, on smart textiles. So really a lot of diverse sectors interested in Horizon Europe, interest from universities, but also from SMEs, from NGOs. The next calls under Horizon Europe will be issued early 2025. So that's why New Zealand entities are very interested to learn more about that and to develop partnerships with European entities. So for those of you who who keep an eye on Horizon Europe, it is possible to include New Zealand entities as part of consortium with funding, and there is appetite on the New Zealand side. Now, if we go to the next slide, which is actually mostly about pitches, but that's basically to illustrate the range of sectors in which engagement is promising. Clearly, I mean, the political signals are there to expand the relations. As you know, there's new leadership at the helm of the European Union, and President von der Leyen has made clear what will be the priorities that will inform the next 5 years of her mandate. And clearly, further engagement in the Indo-Pacific region is part of that. And New Zealand is explicitly mentioned as one of the like-minded members where closer relations will be developed. And there are actually a number of specific areas that are identified, and these include cyber and digital, space, secure and resilient supply chains, of course, as well as technologies. And all of these priorities resonate very well with the priorities of New Zealand around the implementation of the FTA and around more broadly the engagement with the EU. Of course, the New Zealand economy is still very much relying on its agri-food sector. So there are a lot of opportunities there, from wine to aquaculture. But New Zealand also seeks to diversify, and both in terms of economic sectors and in terms of economic partners. New Zealand is indeed a small market of 5 million inhabitants, but it's also a market that is close to Australia, that has strong links to the Pacific, and it's in the midst of economic reforms. So considering the common priorities, there is clearly room for more Europe-New Zealand trade and investment. And this is in particular the case in the high value segment. I'm sure Jonathan will speak more in detail about that, but maybe I thought I would highlight a few sectors that are of particular interest. The green transition, clearly, I mean, New Zealand needs to decarbonize, like the EU. The country aims to become net zero by 2050. So there's a lot of focus on green energy, green shipping, green aviation. Digital, of course, New Zealand has a digital strategy. Just a couple of weeks ago, the government also outlined a strategic approach to artificial intelligence, with a clear willingness to boost the use and the development of artificial intelligence across the country, and with a preference for a light touch approach on regulation. Innovation, tech, infrastructure are all sectors of interest. I mentioned space previously. Clearly, New Zealand has a booming industry on space. There's an existing partnership already with the German Aerospace Center, and New Zealand is seeking to expand with new partnerships. And a heads up, because especially in that field of space, Enterprise Europe Network is working on a virtual matchmaking event that will take place early December, which will involve the New Zealand industry. Also, maybe to flag that as part of the current priorities here in New Zealand is to attract foreign investment. Again, in a very broad range of sectors, from aquaculture to infrastructure to clean technologies. So as Mariana mentioned, the FTA has made it easier for Europeans to invest in New Zealand. And on top of that, the current government is taking autonomous steps to facilitate inward investment. As a very last word, I would also emphasize that New Zealand has to be taken, obviously, has to be seen in the broader regional context. New Zealand has very deep and close connections to the Pacific and to the Pacific Islands. So I'm sure that when I say Pacific Islands, many of you think tourism, and yes, for sure. But there's also a lot of interest from the Pacific on deepening trade and investment in key sectors like the green transition, energy, the blue economy. So also a space to watch. I'll stop there. Back to you, Mariana, in particular on resources that may be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Diane. So yes, just last a few slides and few pieces of information from my side. I work in the area of international trade for many years now, and if there is one thing that I have learned is that information is really important, and finding information is not always so obvious as we would think. So since the conclusion of the negotiations for this agreement, and especially around the entry into force, we made a lot of efforts together with Diane and all our colleagues, both here in Brussels and in Wellington, to make sure that the necessary information is available to all the European exporters who would be interested in the New Zealand market. and in particular to small companies who often have less resources or who often have more complicated access to these pieces of information. Therefore, already at the time of concluding the negotiations, we developed a dedicated page for the free trade agreement, which provides an overview in several forms. For example, what we call a memo. This provides chapter by chapter, topic by topic overview. We also developed a long document with the frequently asked questions. And we also developed already from the beginning information leaflets, which then grew in terms of numbers over time. At the beginning, we had a leaflet introducing the FTA benefits overall, and we had a dedicated one on agriculture and on sustainability. But then by the time the agreement entered into force, we developed sectoral leaflets for all the main chapters, all the main topics covered in the free trade agreement. And we also organized a lot of events, both here in Europe and also in New Zealand. What else did we still do? All these documents are available on the websites of Directorate General for Trade, and there is a last slide in my presentation with all the useful links. But just to give you a brief overview, for example, we developed, I think it's around 60 pages, if I'm not mistaken, so very detailed guide for targeted particularly for small and medium-sized companies, how they can benefit, what are the sectors that they can benefit, what are the applicable rules, where can they find the specific rules relevant for their businesses. So this is a specific guide. Then, as I mentioned before, we also developed, by the time the agreement entered into force, 10 thematic leaflets, which are focusing, for example, on services, on the sustainability provisions, on government procurement, on investment opportunities, and so on. We are also working now on a member state specific set of leaflets, which means that for example, we take Belgium, and with the help of an external contractor, we are looking into the possibilities that could be most relevant for exporters from Belgium. Actually, I've just received the great news this morning from colleagues that the first set of these leaflets should be available from the 6th of November. So please keep an eye on our web pages. Then we also have the so-called access to markets portal, which you may know already because this is not new. This already exists for a couple of years in its updated format, and it keeps on expanding in terms of coverage. And once a new agreement enters into force, all the relevant information, including the tariff information, the applicable rules of origin, it is all added to the access to markets portal. So if I could recommend you one first entry point, if you want to check the export conditions and possibilities to New Zealand, probably the access to markets portal could be a very good one. Here you can search by destination market, by product, and you find a lot of information at this one-stop shop. As I mentioned before, the Access to Markets portal has a rules of origin tool, as well as we call it ROSA, Rules of Origin Self-Assessment Tool, which helps companies to define if their product meets the necessary requirements to benefit from the preferential tariff rates negotiated under the trade agreements. The Access to Markets portal is expanding. It already has very important elements on, for example, conformity assessment, but it also gives useful information on many trade-related aspects of international exchanges. And of course, our social media pages, both on X and on LinkedIn. Please follow us for the most recent updates and news. And this last slide, it looks scary. It was not meant for presentation purposes, but rather for circulation. But for sharing this, I will leave you in the mighty hands of Michaela and the colleagues organizing this webinar to make sure that all the participants can have access to all these links. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Marianna and Diana, for this very insightful presentation. If you don't mind, we received a question in the chat that I will read it to you, and maybe we can find an answer for this one. So the question says, what are the main benefits of the FTA in terms of mobility of people? Is the FTA going to make it easier for companies to be able to transfer people between both regions for work purposes, e.g. visa application process?
Yes, absolutely. And I would like to invite, wait, I don't see the chat. Yes, now I see it. Yes, I would like to invite Ms. Ortuno to check the details of all these provisions under the services chapter of the free trade agreement. But yes, definitely the agreement has detailed provisions on how companies can transfer their people, their families, how the necessary qualifications can be then used for providing services in New Zealand and so on. So yes, we have a very detailed chapter with very detailed provisions on all that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very so. And I would have also a question for Diane, who is the question is if there is a contact for Horizon Europe in New Zealand for New Zealand companies if they were interested.
Yes, indeed, there are contacts. Actually, so there's a MB, so the Ministry for Business and Enterprise is the contact ministry on Horizon Europe, and they work with a network of Horizon Europe national contact points. There are, for those who know Horizon Europe, there are different clusters, and there's a national contact point in New Zealand for each of these clusters. And as part of the slides with all the resources, you have the link to the MB page, which lists all the national contact points.
Great, thank you very much. So concerning the last slide with the links, we will share the slides that we received from Marianna, so we will have access to all the useful links. So thanks a lot to both of you. And now I will introduce our next guest. It's the coordinator of the EN New Zealand Consortium. Jonathan Young is Head of Industry and Government Engagement at Araaki, New Zealand's New Energy Development Centre. So Jonathan is our main contact in New Zealand, and he will talk to you as well he will provide more insights on the free trade agreement from the perspective of business entrepreneurs, and will also explain what EN New Zealand can do for you if you wish to do business in New Zealand. Thanks a lot, Jonathan, for being here. I leave you the floor.
Thank you, Michele, and thank you everybody for the opportunity to share this time with you. It is just past 9 p.m. on Thursday evening here, and I often enjoy evening meetings and chats with people from Europe. So I am the country coordinator for the EEN in New Zealand. I am the head of industry and government engagement for a company called Araaki, which is a company created by the New Zealand government to accelerate energy innovation to help us decarbonise our economy. Prior to that, I was a member of Parliament of the New Zealand Parliament for 12 years, from 2008 through to 2020. So I'm still engaged and work with government, but from the outside in rather than the inside out. And it's a pleasure to be with you today. As Diane has mentioned, New Zealand has a small population of 5.2 million people. Our GDP is $380 billion. And when you compare that to the EU, we are very, very small. We see the relationship with the EU as very important. We have cultural ties and historic ties with Europe, and we value our relationship exceedingly. and often when my wife and I go to the Northern Hemisphere, we spend time in Europe, invariably, and last year we spent a month in the EU. So the comparison between the two partners in the FTA is we are small compared to the massive size of the EU. So we do, as I said, value the relationship and the opportunity to free up our trade and build and nurture our relationship, which I think is, as Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister, said, it's not just volume, it is values. And I think that the FTA has always been acknowledged as a very strong FTA because of sharing common values. You can see by taking a New Zealand perspective that our exports to the EU in goods is just under 4.7 billion New Zealand dollars, and services is $759 million. And we do plan to continue to grow that, as well as welcoming opportunities for European businesses to operate and trade in New Zealand as well. And we see this as an amazing opportunity to benefit small and medium enterprise companies on both sides of the world. This photograph, by the way, is a photograph of New Zealand native bush, covered in mist. This is where Kiwis live. And I thought the photographs that I show in these slides would show you what some of New Zealand's environment is. We are very conscious of our environment, and we desire to care for it for generations to come. So we have been recognised consistently as a good place and an easy place to do business. And this is simply because of our streamlined regulatory framework, our simple tax system, and transparency in government policies. So the World Bank did this assessment. They stopped in 2020, but in the last one, they said New Zealand is one of the easiest places in the world to do business. So if you do come here, for example, you could register a new business in New Zealand with the government in less than 24 hours. And we do also have very high standards in terms of financial markets and business etiquette. And we understand that actually having a trusted, secure, and stable economic system is absolutely important for the success of international trade, and ensuring that people who wish to trade with New Zealand feel secure in their activities. As has been said, from a New Zealand perspective, there are benefits. Tariff savings of $100 million per year on New Zealand exports to the EU from day one. Conversely, the EU exporters, as Mariana has said, will have annual savings to more than 140 million euro per year. And that would be commensurate in terms of the different sizes of economies. So there is positives for both sides. I think that the issue that has probably captured people's attention mostly is the geographic indications in the free trade agreement. We have seen our wine industry flourish. Our annual exports is over nearly $3.5 billion a year now, and 17% of the world's Sauvignon Blanc originates from New Zealand. That's one of the wines that New Zealand is famous for, as well as Pinot Noir that comes from the Central Otago down the South Island, a fairly arid, hilly region that grows beautiful grapes for Pinot Noir. And so having access, but also having the protection of identity of products is really important to us as well. We have Manuka honey, which has very strong health benefits that comes from New Zealand as well, and we are keen to protect its integrity through geographical indications. Here's some photographs of product that New Zealand grows and produces, exports, cherries, what we call kiwi fruit, and our cheeses as well, which are reputable internationally. And of course, we appreciate the wonderful products, particularly the cheeses that come out of Europe. We have, in terms of livestock, we are some of the most efficient, lowest carbon producers of dairy products in the world. When you think about New Zealand being on the other side of the world to the major markets in the Northern Hemisphere, we are competing with the added cost of transportation. That means that we have to be very efficient in the production of our products, but we also have to be very mindful, particularly of those carbon miles, and especially with the carbon border adjustment mechanism increasingly paying attention to the carbon emission of travel and production, currently not in the agribusiness sector, but in time, I think the world will follow the lead that the EU has established in this space. We are very, very famous for our aquaculture, our beautiful, pristine, clean waters with some of our beautiful products that grow naturally. And of course, space has become a very important part of New Zealand's technology as well. We have an amazing area of open skies above New Zealand, and there are many satellites that get launched from the launch site that Rocket Lab have on the Mahia Peninsula. And increasingly, New Zealand is up there with many of the other successful nations in space technology. For example, those rocket engines in that rocket there are all 3D printed, which is amazing technology you would never have thought of 10, 20 years ago to be able to do that. And of course, if you were watching what happened in Barcelona over the last couple of months with the America's Cup, what an amazing venue. I was in Barcelona just this time a year ago, and to see the technology that has been developed around fibers and materials that make these amazing yachts, the technology that they just with a very small square meterage can foil above the surface of the sea. Who would have thought about that as well? So there's a lot of innovation and there's a lot of amazing skills when it comes to building state-of-the-art things like yachts, but also a large number of other products as well. And of course, tourism. We are a beautiful country to visit. The great outdoors is unique, it's beautiful, it's wide, it's not crowded. The wilderness is one of the great attractions of New Zealand. And so we do appreciate that very, very much. And of course, food technology. Being able to produce high nutrition food, to be able to, in terms of manufacture of medications, and particularly with Maoridom, and I'll touch on that very shortly, their knowledge, their traditional knowledge of healing herbs and plants is something which science is validating and building upon. So my question, and no doubt many questions that people ask, well, what makes it easy doing business in New Zealand? If we are one of the best countries to do business in, the answer to that is trusted relationships and networks. We're a small country of 5.3 million people. How can we succeed in such a large world, and how can we make our way? 85% of what we manufacture, we export. We must have strong and positive relationships. We must build trust and a win-win situation with our customers and the people that we seek to do business with. So trusted relationships mean you can quickly connect from your domestic network in Europe to our domestic network in New Zealand. Networks are designed to make our world smaller and more connected. So that's where really important. This is where the Enterprise Europe network comes into play, because what this does, it creates through verified people an ability to connect and build relationship to accelerate the opportunities that you might wish to pursue. So we are small, but we are connected. We are a developed democracy committed to honouring Te Tiriti, which is our Treaty of Waitangi with Māoridom. We are globally distant, but we need to be efficient to be competitive. That's very important for a small nation like us to be able to make our way in the world. So who should we connect with? So here's a couple of, I think, websites that would help you. And already Mariana has mentioned MB, and that's where you can connect with the national people in terms of Horizon Europe, but also New Zealand Trade and Enterprise and the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment. They are all the time relationship building between countries, between governments, in order to enhance and cause trade to succeed. So relationships and networks, it builds trust both ways, which reduces risk and mistakes, helps you get it right the first time, will save you from making costly mistakes, fast tracks your connection from one domestic network to another domestic network, accelerates the growth of your targeted market, or growth of knowledge of your targeted market, and should enable reciprocal benefit, which gives longevity to those relationships. So we need to ensure that the relationships are bringing benefit to both parties in order to foster longevity. So who are the trusted, vetted, experienced and connected organizations? Well, the Enterprise Europe Network, the Chambers of Commerce, particularly the Auckland Business Chamber, who are part of the EEN Consortium in New Zealand, leading iwi organizations. Iwi is referring to Maori, and Te Taumata is an organization that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade brought together to help develop the free trade agreement between the EU and New Zealand. And this is recognizing the Maori economy in New Zealand, which is estimated to be at the value of about $70 billion. And of course, innovation and research networks like Ariaki, the one that I am a staff member of. These are some of the networks that we can connect you with. And the Chambers of Commerce and their regional affiliates represent 22,000 members. And so that's essentially talking about 20,000 plus businesses out there that we can reach out to connect you with. So we look forward to welcoming you to New Zealand. Thank you very much, Michelle, and I'll hand back to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks a lot for this very good presentation, very interesting, that explains very well how the network works. We have a question in the chat, and the question says, is New Zealand also importing Italian wines?
Yes, there is. For example, tomorrow there is a luncheon in my city where I live with an importer of Italian wines. That's what his business is. And so there are businesses that specifically import wines from Europe, and quite specifically from Italy. Or you may have heard of a person called Bowden Barrett, who is is a member of the All Black rugby team. He started a business which will import only French wines. So apart from New Zealand producing great wines, there's also a great love for European wines, and there will be multiple importers.
Thank you, Jonathan. We just received another question from Nicola Fantini, who is our EN coordinator in Rome. And Nicola is asking, considering the New Zealand's marine environment is a taonga, which are the most interesting blue economy sectors for a collaboration between EU and New Zealand?
That's a very good question.
Wow.
Currently, offshore wind is taking quite a bit of attention in the blue water economy, of course, and a number of mature companies that are wanting to build offshore wind farms are from Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, and also Park Wind, which has historically been based in Belgium, but now has been purchased by a Japanese company called the Jera Group. And recently we also had Blue Float out of Spain involved as well. So there's been a reasonable amount of interest from Europe in that space. I think also in aquaculture, there are opportunities in that space as well. New Zealand is wanting to double its trade by value in the next decade. And so there will be opportunities for businesses to partner, I think, in New Zealand. And I would suggest partnering is a really good way to do it, because you want to, if you want to have product from New Zealand to Europe, you need people here to do that. If you want to bring product from Europe to New Zealand, you equally need partners to do that as well. So if you are interested, there are organizations I can connect you with.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan, and thanks, Nicola, for this very interesting question. So let me now pass to the next guest. And as we've been talking about Italian wines, and I would like to introduce Giada Platania from Confindustria Sicilia, so from Palermo in Sicily. And Giada has accepted to participate and to tell us a story about one of her clients who, thanks to the help of Enterprise Europe Network, has started doing business in New Zealand. But I will not tell more. I will let Giada talk about this. So Giada, over to you, and thanks a lot for being here.
Thanks to you, Michele, and the EN team from internationalization. Jonathan was mentioning that networks are designed to make our world smaller. And then we come to two opposite areas of the world. Say similar population, 5 million Sicily, 5 million in New Zealand, with very, very keen focus on agri-food. So I would like to tell you about an experience that's a recent experience by one of our companies, an old client of ours, the CEO of Adriana Pet Food. You can find the link in the chat. So unfortunately, he could not be there because he's traveling all the time. It's a very export-oriented company. So Adriana Pet Food is based in Sicily. They've been working in the pet food industry for more than 50 years. They sell more than 50% abroad. They are present in 30 countries and growing, keep on growing, both in these markets where they're present, but they're also open to new markets. Last June, he was traveling in China. It was at the business fair. And then he was planning to go to New Caledonia for some real important reasons. He could not reach Caledonia because of the turmoils that were taking place at the time there. So he did a quick market research together with us, and he found out that there might be very good opportunities in New Zealand, also due to the newly signed free trade agreement. So he contacted me and he asked me, but by the way, do you have any contacts in New Zealand? And I said, of course. Also taking into account that just 1 month before we had organized, I'm co-chairing the agri-food sector group, and we had just organized a very interesting market introduction to our sector group members about New Zealand with Jonathan Young from Araki. So I had a very fresh network contact and direct one. So I immediately contacted Jonathan, who promptly responded. So in a very short time, despite the short time, he managed to organize a series of meetings with the relevant institutional and business stakeholders and economic operators. Just mentioning the Honorary Consul of Italy, the President of the Italian Chamber, as mentioned before, the EN New Zealand has strong connections with all these environments. The Auckland Business Chamber, the New Zealand Trade Enterprise, the President of New Zealand Business Council, plus a series of local entrepreneurs. So until yesterday, I was in touch with Vincenzo Adragna, CEO of the Adragna Pet Food Company, and he keeps on thanking me and Jonathan for, and of course, not just me as the tipo Sic Industria Enterprise Europe Network, as we could, his mission to New Zealand. We help him discover directly this new market, understand the market, meet the potential buyers and customers. And so he really appreciated, first of all, not just the information, the awareness raising part, but also the human contact that Jonathan was mentioning before. So we're both smaller, but we are all both very well connected. And I think this experience and this testimonial can be useful also for all the other companies.
Thank you very much, Giada. This is a perfect example on how, let's say, trusted relationships can help really develop achievements. So we hope that in the future we will be able to also hear more about the achievement side of this. So thanks a lot for this, and thanks to Jonathan for the great support that provided to you. So now we have a second testimony of a Polish entrepreneur. His name is Damian Kasperczyk, and he's the CEO of a company called Ecoinventica. Unfortunately, Damian cannot be here because he's traveling, but he has recorded a video for us, and he's going to share his experience on the implementation of their eco-innovative technology for the biopurification of air in the New Zealand market. So we will play this video, and I thank a lot both Damian Kasperczyk, but also Vincenzo Adragna, who had prepared his own video, but unfortunately we cannot play it because there is a sound issue. So, but we will make sure that at some point we might have the opportunity to re-record it and share it in the future. So we are going to play this video now.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Damian Kasperczyk. I'm the professor of Universitat Cooperativa de Colombia, but above all, I'm the CEO of Ecoinventica Ltd. Firstly, I would like to say thank you for the organizer of this meeting, that I'm able to share with you with our experience concerning the implementation of our eco-innovative technologies for the biopurification of air in the New Zealand market. Let me say a few words about us. Ecoinventica is a firm which is implementing on the whole world our own solution or technology, eco-innovative technology for the biopurification of air from volatile organic compounds, odors and methane. This technology is dedicated directly for all kinds of industrial branches of industry, like for example mine industry, agriculture industry, paint industry, etc. So for all kinds of industry which is interested to solve the problem of emission of this kind of compounds. I must stress that volatile organic compounds and others are very dangerous for our health. They are harmful, for example, and they cause eye, nose, and throat irritation, damage to liver and kidney. Of course, they are precursor of photochemical smoke. They are cancerogenic. So we can say, or we have to remember, that every year dirty air kills over 2.5 million people on the world. That's what is worth to stress. I think we have to remember that air pollution costs the global economy more than 5 trillion annually. That's why this problem is the international problem. Also is very important for the New Zealand market. And the second very important factor during the implementation of our eco-innovative technology for the biopurification of air in the compact trickle bed bioreactors, it was that industry, both on the European market and New Zealand market, must meet with strict environmental regulation, especially after the signed Paris Agreement between the New Zealand and EU. So if the industry doesn't meet with this regulation, they have to pay big penalties if they don't meet still with this regulation, so the factory can be even shut down. At this moment, I must stress that Ecoinventica is on the beginning of implementation of our technology, our product on the New Zealand market. We are doing our first steps. That's why I would like to share with you our experience, which we have till this time, and I would like to show the barriers and opportunities which we meet during our way. So maybe I will begin from the barriers. So the first, it is of course the distance. It is very important, especially for the SME enterprises, because this distance give us or take us our time and of course the money. The very important is to meet with the regulation, law and administrative rules. For example, when we begin to implement our technology to this market, it shows us that it's very difficult to bring our microorganisms, which we use in our trickle bed bioreactors, to the New Zealand market. So we have to find the solution for this. For us, the solution it was to find any subcontractors and partners. That's why, by help of our government and the project, the Green Evo, we find the company which is very helpful for us, and they show us the all factors which are very helpful to implement products on this market. I mean, they show us also the culture. This film, it is Infinity Water. That's what is very important. We have to remember about huge competition, which is from the side of the Chinese market. But I think the Chinese market is nowadays we can feel the force of the Chinese market on the whole world. But when we are talking about the opportunities, of course, very helpful for us, as I told in the previous slide, it was the Paris Agreement on climate change, and nowadays EU-New Zealand trade agreement. It helps us to solve many problems, like for example with this microorganisms, because some topics we can solve by the help of the EU grants or the R&D projects. So for example, we take to the collaboration also the universities, and we can do some research which can help us adapt our product to this market. What is very important, not only in the technical side, but also to adapt our technology to the administrative rules and law rules, of course. That's what is very important, and I have already mentioned about this. It is the partners and subcontractors. We have to remember that it's very good to have the subcontractors, because when we put the technology there in the New Zealand, we have to remember about the guarantee. So we have to have the people who help us in this matter as well. I must stress in this moment that we have to remember that New Zealand is very interesting also because not far away from them there is the new market. It is the market of the Australia, which has in our case the same problem with the air pollution, and it gives us the new opportunities. I would like to also stress very important thing, which is the support of the network like EEN or Genevo or our embassy. For example, nowadays we are cooperate, or we were chosen to the project Green Evo, which is under umbrella of our
Qua sei appena parlato, ma
environment. So the ministry choose about 20, 30 the most eco-innovative technologies and firm, and they help them introduce their product to all world. It's very important, especially for the SME, because you know when we take some money, especially for the market, which we do not know exactly. So it's very helpful when we came to the new market under the umbrella of the ministry, because we are recognized as a firm and technology which is validated. I think that it can be very helpful. That's why on the end I would like to add that it is impossible in a few minutes to show you the all opportunities or the all barriers, but if anybody is interested in information and they would like to know more about this, I would like to invite you to the contact with the firm Eco-Inventica. On the end, I would like to only say that we have the excellent product, we have the excellent team. So on the end, I would like to invite you to the
Okay. I think the video was complete. We have reached almost the end of this webinar. I would like to thank our chair of the internationalization thematic group, Agnieszka Turinska, who helped us find this testimony. And I would like to thank all speakers for this very interesting webinar. I leave the floor to my colleague Eric Amaral Garcia from DG Grow, who will provide some closing remarks. Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you very much, Michele. Thanks to Damian for his video, and of course to all of our speakers for their insightful contributions, and especially those joining from New Zealand. I know it's a late hour there. So today we've seen the great value of EU-New Zealand cooperation that brings to businesses through the new trade agreement, Horizon Europe, and the Enterprise Europe Network. It was great to hear our EN partners, especially including in Sicily and in New Zealand, and to see how they foster these connections. I'd like to invite business support organizations in third countries, like in New Zealand, to join the new EN starting on 1st of July 2025. As you might already know, on 1st of October, we published the new open invitation for international network partners to join the network in the new years. So we published all the details for the expressing your interest on our website, along with the brochure. So please don't miss out our info session on the 27th of November to learn how your organization can join and benefit from joining the EN. and expertise and contacts of over 3,000 EN specialized advisors across Europe. So yeah, this was my short closing. Thanks again to our speakers and participants, and please keep an eye out for future webinars in this series. Enjoy your day and evening. Thanks a lot to everyone for organizing this webinar as well.